It's the most contentious issue, and it's happening in an election year. So as you can imagine, it's become a hot political potato. The president has a dilemma, to assent or not to assent, and I'm talking about the anti-gay bill. There are now legal and economic hurdles that the president must maneuver. Parliament may have a say, but as we're learning tonight, it may come down to what the Supreme Court says. And so this battle is not over by any stretch of the imagination. And the fact that the Parliament passed the anti-gay bill really is just a start of a battle. So let's get through for you where we are tonight. It was the Finance Ministry that first quantified for us what the potential economic impact could be. They talked about 3.8 billion World Bank support that could be frozen, that could be affected as a result of this. The IMF says, we are watching you very closely. We've written to them today. We'll tell you what they told us on this particular matter. The president himself, as you know, says he's awaiting the Supreme Court decision on this particular matter. And what was he talking about? It was a conversation that he was having with the diplomatic community yesterday. But yesterday, when he was making this particular point, that writ had not been filed. In fact, that writ was filed today and was filed by Richard Sky, who's gone to the Supreme Court, asking the court to declare the bill as passed by Parliament null and void. So it presumption there is that when the president was speaking yesterday, he somehow knew about the yet to be filed writ. Put in the context of the fact that the majority leader himself had held a press conference yesterday to say, well, this is something that must be challenged in court, and said journalists should take on that responsibility to do so. It is definitely an issue that is going to be contentious, because already we're hearing legal opinions on this particular subject. Now, staying on the theme of the potential financial impact on this, we've had the Ministry of Finance talk about the potential impact as it relates to the IMF program and the budget support that we'll get. And then we've had the IMF itself having responded to an email we sent to them, telling us something entirely different, though, that they cannot comment on this bill just yet. Why? Because it is not law yet. And that is factual. The president hasn't signed it, and so it isn't law. And so they will not comment on it yet. They haven't assessed its economic implications yet. But the Finance Ministry, together with the Bank of Ghana and the GRA, they sat down and they have assessed its financial implications and has advised the president not to assign. The IMF tells us they haven't done that just yet. But there are a few things, though, that they raise in the email response to us that definitely raises a few eyebrows. They talk about the fact that however, the principles based on which they deal with any country are ingrained. They talk about prohibition of discrimination based on personal characteristics, including but not limited to gender. It talks about gender expressions or sexual orientation. And they include this in this response to us because they are actually signaling a very important point. You have to ask yourself the question, this anti-gay bill, does it discriminate based on sexual orientation? The IMF is telling us that maybe it does. And if they render an assessment and they come to this conclusion, many say it does, then that could be a potential reason why they withhold funding. But can they, considering that the parameters of the IMF program is very circumscribed? It doesn't include these specific words there, even if the IMF principles are exactly what you see here, diversity and inclusion. That's another question to talk about. We'll come to keeping them honest pretty shortly, because Ghana is not the only country the IMF is dealing with. Other countries also. And other countries may also have anti-LGBTQ bill. And so is the IMF applying that same rod if they intend to those countries fairly too? We'll talk about that pretty shortly. But then look at the numbers we are talking about. 300 million, and this is in 3 tranches, by the way. I'm talking about the World Bank program, the first Ghana Resilient Recovery Development Policy operation to help us recover on the back of COVID. We talk about 250 million Ghana Financial Stability Fund that could be suspended, according to the Finance Ministry. You talk about this 2.1 billion CD ongoing World Bank support projects that may be affected, $900 million that again may be affected, and a host of others, totaling 850 million, in addition to this 3.8 billion that I talked about at the beginning. So significant numbers there, what we are talking about. Yeah, the US also comes in to tell us that, of course, this could also have significant implications for us, and that it will undermine Ghana's valuable public health, media, but also you have the spokesperson for the State Department telling us that it will affect the business community. And that could be interesting when you begin to look at foreign direct investment as it inflows from the United States. But keeping them honest, the IMF tells us, inclusion, diversity, non-discrimination on the basis of sexual exploitation it's important to them. But they are dealing with Zambia, and Zambia already, as we know, in 2005, cracked down on LGBTQ activities there. In 2023, it was pretty firm there. They have a life imprisonment for you if they were found guilty of the particular act. And that law was passed. There was a crackdown in 2023. The IMF is still dealing with them, doing business in Zambia. 1.3 billion in August 31st. And we talked about this last year. They approved that. As of 2023 December, second tranche was approved. We're talking about a disbursement of 561 million to Zambia. They already have passed a very strict law criminalizing activities of homosexuals in this country. But IMF is still dealing with them. So if you look at that really, if IMF really intends to crack any whip on us because we are there currently asking for some 3 billion, that may be double standards. But you go back to the original response to us. So they haven't assessed it just yet. But they were careful to include, however, that their principles forbid discrimination based on sexual expression. Yes, that is their principle. Why are they not applying that principle in Zambia? Fair question to ask the IMF. We'll see what the assessment comes down to and whether indeed the fears of the finance ministry will be realized. And I want to emphasize this point. And we found a newspaper in Zambia, and the contrast and irony is very interesting. So this is the Daily Mail of Zambia, and I want to circle for you what you see here, the headline that you see here, which I've just circled for you, Sister Act Criminal. And this is Zambia's crackdown I'm talking about. It comes with a sub-headline that says, government warns gay champions will be punished, right? Gay champions will be punished. On that same day, when government was warning to punish those who engage in the act, there's a separate story that's here. I'm circling it for you if you don't see it here, which talks about, quote, UK holds Zambia's hand on death road. On the same day the government was warning there will be a crackdown and they will punish anybody who engages in homosexuality, and that they were saying to people there, if you are involved in the act, that it is criminal. On that same day, the same paper was reporting that the UK, another country that of course has been part of this IMF negotiations and been helping us in the Paris Club, was ready to hold Zambia's hand on this death road under the IMF program. Double standards there, some may point to. So what really is the fuss about when the finance ministry says we may suffer financial implications? So what's happening here? Keeping them honest is a question that must be asked as we begin to pour through what the records tell us on this particular matter when it comes to Zambia. Zambia is not the only country, by the way, that we found that has a very interesting story when it comes to this issue. Because we also found that in Senegal, for example, they also have a very interesting story because they also are benefiting from an IMF program, right? 1966, they had the strong law. In 2022, lawmakers decided to pass a draft bill that sought to actually tighten the screws a bit more. 5 years imprisonment for you, 1.5 billion nonetheless still coming in from the IMF. And Senegal received 279.31 million from the IMF after their first review, December 2023, in spite of having this. So yes, let's put this in greater context on the continent, right? So does it calm your nerves? If the finance ministry looking at this, maybe those fears are unfounded. My guests will share their thoughts with me when we sit down for a conversation. Nonetheless, though, the World Bank has told us that in other places, they have really bitten quite hard. The case of Uganda is interesting. In 2023, when they revived their crackdown on homosexuality there, what did the World Bank do? They halted new loans to Uganda 3 months after stricter laws were passed on this particular matter. And then the US also did something very similar. They withdrew Uganda's preferential trade access to its market. So whereas I make the point about Zambia and I make the point about Senegal, there's also evidence on the continent that yes, they will bite. And for a country that is struggling currently at home of Ghana with economic challenges, the president is paying attention to this a bit more, right? But if you really look at it, the U.S., foreign direct investment, something that the spokesperson for the State Department says could become an issue, U.S. is not really giving us much when it comes to foreign direct investment, because if you look at it, already it's on a downward trend, right? 2.65 billion in 2020, it's dropped to 1.26 billion in 2021, and just climbed marginally to 1.35. So if you put it in a greater context, really, that's where the U.S. is. So in terms of its impact on us, in terms of, foreign direct investment, not too much. We are doing far more business with Australia, Singapore, Burkina Faso, China, India, Taiwan, Nigeria, India, before you even talk about the USA. So should we really care? My guest will try and answer that question when we sit for a conversation here. It's a big one. I'm trying to get to it. We have lawyers joining us. We have one of the sponsors joining us. We have the Christian community represented by the Catholic Bishops' Conference. Then we have an economist, all sides represented. Stay with me. The peer message is always brought to you by Syntax Tanks. It is strong, it is tough. Alomo Bitters experience every greatness in every moment. Ghana AIDS Commission, Pepsodent, every smile matters. And Syntax Tanks is a tank for you because they have the double layer tank, and now you can also have as many layers as you want. It is bespoke. You can call them. They're across the country. They have this 7 years warranty. Nobody else has that. Call them on 0244 335 168 or shop online at syntaxgh.com. They are strong, they are tough. And also recommend Pepsodent to you because it is fortified with pro-fluoride and microcalcium ingredients, sealing tiny invisible holes in your teeth, and it prevents cavities as well. But they also come in various packs, ensuring that regardless of your pocket, you can get something to buy. Pepsodent, every smile matters. My guest tonight, joining me for a conversation, Roxy Nelson Dafiamekwo. He's a co-sponsor of the bill. He's a lawyer himself, MP for Sardai, and he's in the studio with me. Also joining us is Professor Godfrey Bokping. As you may have already observed, this has economic implications. He's an economist and professor of finance at the University of Ghana. But there are also legal questions, and that is why tonight we also have Professor Kojo P.J. Chia, Associate Professor at the School of Law, University of Ghana, and then the very Reverend Clement Kwesi A.J., Secretary General of the Catholic Bishops' Conference, is also with me. They've been proponents of this bill all along. Now they're seeing the hurdles, and the hurdles are mounting. Now there's a legal challenge, there's an economic question, and there's a whole conversation around about whether this will even see the light of day before the elections. And I say the elections because it's important. It's happening in an election year. Roxy Nelson Dafiamekwo, let's start with the very latest on this. It was yesterday we heard the finance minister's warning to the president, don't sign because of economic impact. Then today there's a legal challenge that has been thrown up. You actually hold the view that it is premature. Yeah. Why?
Thank you very much. Good evening to your viewers. Especially to my people in South Dine. Now, the Constitution is very clear regarding this matter. Before a bill becomes a law, it has to be assented to. And so where a bill has been passed by Parliament, and it's not even been remitted to the office of the presidency for purposes of its assent, and there is a legal challenge, then the law it means springs to life. That until such a bill is assented to, gazetted, and published by the clerk to Parliament, it has no force of law. It's no law. Indeed, the law is that a bill, until it is enacted by Parliament, passed and assented to, remains a mere declaration of intention by the sponsor. So it can be withdrawn at any time before assent.
Even after it's been passed?
Exactly.
You can actually withdraw it?
You can withdraw it. Yes, it's not too late. You brought the bill to Parliament. You can withdraw. You can bring a motion to withdraw that. So, at this stage, technically speaking, it is no law. Indeed, it is no law. So how is anybody going to say that a law has been passed by Parliament and that law infringes the Constitution in part or in whole?
Except to say
that you want to proceed under Article Article 21B.
What's that one?
Which states to the effect that, with your permission, if I may read, Article 21B of the Constitution is to the effect that a person who alleges that any act or omission of any person is inconsistent with or is in contravention of a provision of this Constitution may bring an action in the Supreme Court for a declaration to that effect. So there's a distinction between an act of parliament and an act of parliament.
As in the action of parliament, as in the passage.
Yes, a function performed by parliament is alleged to be in contravention of the Constitution, or a decision of parliament not to act. So you elect not to act is also an act, technically speaking, in law. So unless they are proceeding under Article 21B, which is to the effect that Parliament has taken a certain decision, which is to pass a certain bill through the third stage of reading and pass it into law, awaiting presidential assent. And that act in itself is unconstitutional. I don't see how this can be brought within Article 21A, which is an enactment or anything obtained in or done under the authority of that or any other enactment. So 21A speaks of an act of parliament, which is defined in Article 295 to mean an act of parliament means an act enacted by parliament and includes an ordinance. All right. So we have to make...
It didn't say that and assented to by the president.
No, at all, because that's implied.
Okay, it's implied.
Yes, yeah, it's implied. You can't be an act of parliament and have effect in law when it's not assented to by parliament.
So you're confident that this should not.
And I see that in crafting their reliefs, they say that they bring this action within the remit of Article 2, without specifying whether 21A or 21B. But that is a matter that will be...
Professor Pejocha, where do you stand on this?
I agree with both interpretations as have been put forward by the Honorable MP. On the face of it, we have an act made by Parliament, but that act is not final. It is subject to the receipt of assent by the President before it becomes law, properly so called. So at this point, it is not law, and therefore it is premature to initiate an action to deal with that matter. On the other hand, as then I also agree with the interpretation put on Article 2, that if it is an act or an action, Article 21B falls into that, but Article 21 also deals with an enactment. So it's up to the court to determine which way it should go. But I sitting here, my view is that it is premature to bring that action in that context.
Okay, but here's a challenge that you face. Considering the president's pronouncement yesterday, what he said was clear, that he's going to stay. Well, he hasn't been categorical, but he said it towards the end, that we should await the Supreme Court's verdict on this matter. So when you finally send him the transmittal from Parliament, he's telling you, he'll write back to say, I'm not signing, because the subject is before the Supreme Court. That then drags this onto the Supreme Court's decision on this matter, and who knows when that could be.
Now, I have a problem with the decision of the president to act in that manner.
Okay.
Because you see, there is no injunction preventing the president from performing his functions under the Constitution. He's not injuncted. So the president cannot injunct himself. I've seen the reliefs. The injunction they are praying for is part of the mother reliefs. There's no interim injunction being sought by the plaintiff at this time to injunct the president not to perform his functions. Now, you cannot say that the president should not sign the bill, to not assent to the bill until the final determination of the act. You will be injuncting the president from undertaking his functions of office determined by the Constitution. Now, what is curious is that we heard the finance ministry come up with a statement, even though we don't find any author owning to that statement from the ministry. We have a minister, deputy minister, minister of state, chief director, directors. I am looking for a person who will own to that statement, that I issued this statement on behalf of the ministry. So far, there's none. But we presume that it emanated from the ministry.
The finance ministry.
Now, it's a very confused statement.
You mean the finance ministry?
Yes.
I'll come to that substantive.
Okay.
I'll come to that.
So let me choreograph this quickly for you. So based on that, the president meets the diplomatic call and says that I want to assure you that the bill, even though it's not on my desk, I can assure you that I will not assent to it, because I have heard hearsay that somebody is proceeding to the Supreme Court on the matter. Then today, bam, we see that. Look, the minority as we speak, we've been in court in respect of the E-Levy Act, challenging the constitutionality of that law as passed by Parliament. As we speak, that matter has not been determined on its merits. But the president expressly signed the bill as passed by Parliament into law without hesitation. And the bill is in force. The law is in force. Today, if you send a momo beyond a certain threshold, you are debited by way of tax, consequent upon the E-Levy Act. So, how does the president do this to us? Article 1 is very clear that the sovereignty of this nation is inherent in the people, and anybody who exercises the executive powers of state does so on behalf of the people. So we as public officers, we are trustees of the people, and anything we do must be in the interest and the welfare of the people. But the president, presently speaking, is not acting in the interest of the Republic of Ghanaians.
Let me bring in Very Reverend Clement Akwesiji. Very Reverend, so now you have a case before the Supreme Court. The president says we should wait for the Supreme Court to decide before he decides whether to assent or not. What's your reaction to that?
It's a very tricky position of the president. You see, the president has a mandate. He has to fulfill his mandate. When a bill is passed by Parliament, his is to assent. That of the judiciary is a different matter altogether. Fine, you may agree with him. In fact, if he assents to the bill becoming law, and the Supreme Court nullifies it, that means he's wasted his time. But that is none of his business. As an executive, perform your role given you. So for me, for not assenting to the bill, given the reason that the bill is before Parliament, is before the Supreme Court, so you should wait for the decision. That means anytime a bill is passed, the president has to go to the Supreme Court and find out whether there's a case pending before it, and that is not fair to Ghanaians.
But here's the thing: you've been engaging since this matter started. You wanted this assented to as quickly as possible. But now you know the president's mind. And yesterday, before we heard from the president, you were very clear that you will not tolerate a circumstance where it is not assented to. Now you have the reality that the president says, I won't. I'll have to wait for the Supreme Court. What's your next move?
I think and pray that the church may have to go to the president and speak with him. They have to speak with him to know his actual mind. Because I don't know whether it is the Supreme Court who is going to decide for him. He should take his personal decision as enshrined in the Constitution to assent or not to assent. But if you are saying, I'm going to wait for the outcome of the Supreme Court, I mean, that is not correct. So the church will have to engage him and then see what comes out of it.
I mean, but you and let's talk about the context of the president's announcement. He was speaking to the diplomatic community yesterday. And yes, a lot of them are funding our budget. And a lot of them, as I illustrated at the beginning, have warned us, the World Bank, etc., and IMF says, well, our principles are inclusivity, non-discrimination on the basis of sexual expression. There are consequences, $3.8 billion worth. That's why the president is being careful here. You know, isn't it fair that for a president overseeing a country in an economic crisis, he will have to be more circumspect in taking a decision?
That is so. I mean, where the president finds himself now, I sympathize with him. But that's why he's a leader. It is not easy to become a leader, and you are the leader of the people, and this is what the people are saying. So let the people understand the consequence, and if that's what they want, just do it. It is the people. Ghana is a sovereign country. We are not under anybody. Yes, we understand the Committee of Nations, but that doesn't mean that one state is under the other. Fine, we all negotiate for certain things. Is it because of our poverty that we should all succumb to something that we don't want? So that the president must know who he is serving. Is he serving the outside world or is he serving his people? If he's serving his people and people are saying that this is what we want, you should let them know the consequence. And if after engaging with the people that he's serving and they say you want to, then you should do it, but not to listen to outsiders alone. I understand where he's standing, but I mean, to succumb to what they are saying outsiders because of money, let us know. Fascism is part of us. If this is what we want, that's why the difficulties, we stay in it. Because the Israelites didn't find it easy coming out of Egypt from slavery, and they didn't find it easy on the desert. So it is not easy when you don't have the means, when you are under oppression, when you are poor. Somebody can suppress you, and you want to be suppressed at all times. That shouldn't be. The president must be careful. For me, that's my opinion.
And Professor Procedural, there's a point that had come up. Both Roxy makes it, Very Reverend makes it. The president says, I will have to wait for the Supreme Court to decide. Is he making that point based on law, or is just simply one that he's saying because it's the right thing to do? And what I mean is, in the writ, there is an injunction that is being sought to stop him from assenting. And he says he wants to wait. There's a school of thought that says, once there's an injunction that has been filed, even when it hasn't been heard, you should stay your hand. Well, what's your reading on that? When the president makes that point, is he on firm legal grounds here?
The president is on some firm legal grounds, and at the end of the day, it's up to the court to decide. There are two schools of thought or opinions on this, whether when an injunction is issued, it automatically applies or begins to take effect on the person against whom the injunction has been sought before the courts. Now, if you look at the position of the NDC when the e-levy came about, their view was that the moment the injunction is filed, it should stay in the hands of the president, similar to the argument the president is making now. But the president went ahead to sign, to assent to the bill to make it law. Now, the president is taking a different position. I don't recall how the Supreme Court ruled with the e-levy case. I think I remember what the president said was that depending on the decision by the Supreme Court, that will determine if the law will take effect or not, and there can be a reversal. So it can go either way. Now, if the president says the court should decide, I think we should give room for the court to make that pronouncement, because as things stand now, he has taken that decision, and whether we may disagree with it, but ultimately it is a court that will decide. So we have to leave it to the court to make that determination.
That's the point, though, Roxy.
Yes.
Parliament also has a say, because the Constitution says to you, if he writes back and gives you a reason, it doesn't stop you from triggering your next step, which is the vote.
Yeah, that's why I'll make the point that...
or will you also stay...
No, in partial support of what my professor said, Procedural taught me,
okay,
in 205, 206. In partial support of what he said, I think the president is being constitutionally reckless. in the sense that there's a presumption of regularity of the performance of the president until a court pronounces otherwise. That is why even when the president's election into office is challenged, all the actions that he will undertake is presumed to be regular and constitutional until he is otherwise removed by a court of law, which is the Supreme Court. So this is the provision in the Constitution. Where you decide to veto a bill, there's a procedure under Article 106(8) for you to follow. Let me cite two examples. We've passed 3 private members' bills in Parliament, remitted them to the office of the President. The President has refused to assent to them, kept the bills, and recently in December wrote a long memo to the Speaker of Parliament, which is in breach of the 14-day time limit within which he has to do that. And with your permission, let me read for the education of the people. Look, where the President refuses to assent to a bill, he shall within 14 days after the refusal, A, state in a memorandum to the Speaker any specific provisions of the bill which in his opinion should be reconsidered by Parliament, including his recommendations for amendment, if any. Or B, inform the Speaker that he has referred the bill to the Council of State for consideration and comment under Article 90 of this Constitution. Now, what this means is that where you have strong disposition to not assenting to a bill, it is not your business under law to keep it. Perhaps your reservation about the bill is in respect of some provisions or the entire law. Say so to Parliament, because Parliament is mandated under law in this Constitution.
But to be clear, as we speak, it's not formally before him.
So that is why I'm saying that the President is being constitutionally reckless, because now Parliament, if we finally remit this bill to the office of the President, is going to detain it until maybe 2-3 years when Supreme Court makes a determination in the matter. Parliament will not be able to proceed as determined under Article 106. That where the President remits in terms of the bill back to Parliament with explanatory amendments and all that, Parliament is mandated to refer that back to a committee to consider, return to the House, and then it will be considered and approved by 2/3 majority. And when that is done, it is remitted to the office of the President for his assent without hesitation.
Suggesting that the President doesn't respond to you in 14 days, the constitutional clock stops. It stops you from also going ahead.
Exactly.
It stops you.
Yes, because what are you going to act on? Because there's no memo from the President saying that I have refused assent or not. You understand? So he's holding everybody to ransom. And that is not rule of law. And look, you can't have an executive president act this way.
But to be fair, though, this is hypothetical. I mean, when it comes
it is not hypothetical.
Well, he said we should wait.
Look, I'm giving you an example that the President breached Article 106(8). When between August and December, he decides to withhold a bill that is supposed to have remitted and responded to within 14 days. He's sending that memo after 6 months. And that is a matter after 6 months.
But that's a clear violation of the Constitution.
Exactly. And that is a matter that I'm even contemplating suing. Because we can't allow the President to do that. Time limitation in the Constitution is so material. So what is happening? He's playing tricks with everybody. Whimsically. He has no regard for the constitutional imperatives.
Stay with me. I mean, very Reverend, do you agree that the President is playing tricks here just to avoid signing this into law? Hello, very Reverend.
I think, yes, to some extent, I think so. Because for me, he has to do his work. If he thinks that he has some issues with some of the provisions in the bill and the whole bill or part of it, as my honorable member of Parliament was saying, he should say so and state it categorically, follow the law, follow the Constitution, and then write your reasons. You see, there are 3 arms of government. Each has its role to play. Allow them, each party, to play its role, but don't depend on another person. another arm of government. You have to assent. If you don't want to assent, the provisions are there. 106, they are there. Just follow it. But to say that somebody has sent a case to Supreme Court and therefore should wait for the judiciary to do their work, for me, I don't think it's being fair to Ghanaians and it's following the constitution as supposed to be.
I mean, how strong is the church prepared to be on this matter? Because this is something that you've pushed and campaigned for years.
Exactly.
The moment is here. You have a bill passed now. How strong are you willing to be on this?
They are taking a decision, and I'm sure they will be at the Jubilee House very soon. I mean, that's what I think. That's what I can see. That in fact they are thinking, reflecting, and watching whatever the president is saying and doing, and they work one day. I mean, very soon, not far, to the house. They are thinking, because we know the Ghanaians, we know the people of Ghana what they want, and the president, you can't do what. You have to do what the people want, but in accordance with the law. So if this is what they say they want, it may be difficult for you, but that is what they want.
You've told me yesterday that there will be political consequences if this is not assented to.
Sure, and I still stand by that.
Define political consequences when you mean.
In terms of elections, people are going to vote, and the church is on the ground. The church is not only in Accra. The Catholic Church is almost everywhere, in the regions, in the districts, in the villages, and so on. And the priests are all over. The Catholics are all over. You know what they are thinking. So the president not assenting, he must also think about the repercussions, the implications of his actions.
Professor Procedural, can the president detain this bill once it's transmitted to him beyond the constitutionally stipulated 14 days?
Yes. According to Article 106, he has other options. He can refer it to the Council of States. And the Council of States has 30 days within which to make proffer his advice for to send it back to the president. So in that case, we are going beyond the 30-day limit. And in fact, some observers are of the view that there is no time limit as such with regard to when Council of State could respond. But the general view is that it should be within 30 days.
But is that 30 days specified in the Constitution? Because in the first instance, it has 14 days. It's very clear. In the case of the Council of State referral, is this specified?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's there is one area where he seeks the advice of the Council of State where it is clearly stated that it's 30 days. I can't recall that exactly. Okay. But with this particular one, there is no time limit. However, constitutional lawyers are of the view that the 30-day limit for the other situation will also apply to this one.
Interesting. And the second follow-up, I'll come to you pretty shortly on this. The follow-up then is, if it does that stop Parliament from triggering its powers to vote and veto it with a 2/3 majority if they can marshal that number?
Certainly. It will stay in their hands until the 30-day limits would have expired.
If the president decides to go beyond the 30 days, as you're explaining, does that perpetually stop Parliament from acting?
Well, that is where we will have to examine the Constitution carefully to know if the 30-day limit actually applies to this particular situation we are discussing. And so it will be probably left to the courts to determine that. Well,
I really don't envy the Supreme Court judges who will be sitting on this particular
matter.
Not at all. Not. Yes, you have a point.
Yes, Prof, if you may avert your mind to Article 106(8)(b), which is to the effect that the President will have to inform Speaker that he has referred the bill to Council of State for consideration and comment under Article 90 of this Constitution. That's within 7 days. Now, what does Article 90 say? That's where the proviso is. Now, Article 90 is in respect of consideration of bills by Council of State. 91 is to the effect that a bill which has been published in the Gazette or passed by Parliament shall be considered by the Council of State if the President so requests. That's one. 2, a request from the President for consideration of a bill may be accompanied by a statement setting forth the amendments or changes, if any, which the President proposes for consideration by the Council of State. 3 is very critical. 3, consideration of a bill under clause 1 of this article shall be completed within 30 days. All right, within 30 days after the third reading in Parliament of that bill, except that where the bill was passed under a certificate of urgency, the Council of State shall consider it and report to the President within 72 hours.
So you say, maximum, he had 30 days plus 40.
Exactly.
That's maximum.
No, so if he's not referring the bill, he's simply vetoing and referring to Parliament, he has to make that decision, send that memo to Parliament within 14 days after the veto decision is taken. But where he's proceeding on the second leg, which is 106(8)(b), referring to Council of State, he will do so subject to 90. 90 gives you the procedure that the Council of State must follow, and that is 30 days.
There's no room to maneuver beyond 30
exactly.
days.
So there are time limitations regarding what Council of State...
So here's the thing, but what you're saying that the Council of State has 30 days to do this?
Yes,
but that
will get back to the President.
Exactly. But when it gets back to the President, then how many days will he have?
The President will have to refer it to Parliament as soon as he receives it.
Okay, and then that's when you can then trigger your...
Yes, because we are compelled under Article 106(10). You say where a bill reconsidered under clause... Okay, let me read clause 9. Clause 9 is to the effect that Parliament shall reconsider a bill taking into account the comments made by the President or the Council of State, as the case may be, under clause 8 of this article. 10. Where a bill reconsidered under clause 9 of this article is passed by Parliament by a resolution supported by the votes of not less than 2/3 of the members of Parliament, the President shall assent to it within 30 days after the passing of the resolution. Okay. So there are time limits as when this procedure is triggered.
But here's the thing. I mean, I'm very convinced now that this is not over by a long shot.
At all.
There is so much still at stake here. And the passage was just the first step in a long battle that needs to be fought now. And we've just been joined by Sheikh Arimaya Shaibu, who speaks for the chief Imam. And he had called in to say he wanted to contribute. And let's hear his thoughts on this. Sheikh, now we are listening to this battle that many of you who had advocated for this thought it had been won. And I know people celebrated last week, Wednesday, when it was passed. But everything I've heard from the lawyers, from the finance ministry, from the international community says the battle is actually about to begin.
Thank you so much. I have been following the discussion, and my worry and anxiety about this issue has been worsened. Just like the National Chief Imam is worried after we have given him the brief. The Chief Imam is particularly interested in seeing the passage of this bill into law, because for us it's a matter of religion about something that is so objectionable, reprehensible, that undermines the very existence of the family. Our worry more stems from the fact that an external pressure is being brought to bear on us in taking a decision about things that has to do with our own destiny as a nation. Indeed, in my view, it makes complete nonsense of our independence. Tomorrow is the 6th of March, and we are celebrating our 67th year of our independence. As a nation, independence of our nationhood, 67 years. And the majority of citizens of our country see this gay thing and LGBT as something opprobrious that we must all reject with all the strength and the might and the spirit as a nation which has a deep sense of God. That is why our constitution begins in the name of the Almighty God. Our national anthem begins in the name of God. We swear people into office on the basis of our belief in God. Our national pledge ends, and so help me God. This is a nation that is so deep in our sense of God. And this particular thing is something that is completely in complete confrontation with God's system. So why is our independence? That is one of our major worries. Because now it's not even about our concern and feelings as citizens of this country, but because a certain pressure from outside, which didn't begin today. We can remember the time of His Excellency Atta Mills, where Cameroon associated economic support with LGBT issue, that any African nation that does not approve of LGBT risk the danger of losing economic support. Now, under this circumstance, IMF is also bringing its pressure to bear on us. So it means that as a nation, we are not truly independent. And it must be a worry for every citizen of this country must be worried. That as a nation, 67 years, our forebears fought. Some people lost their lives. Just recently, we celebrated the 24th February 1948 incident. So why are we celebrating all these things? If we cannot we cannot even determine things about our nation on our own, but we have to really succumb to the pressure of external forces, then we are not truly independent. And tomorrow's independence celebration, therefore, will not have any meaning to any citizens of this country. So therefore, the president, my proposal is that has only this opportunity to leave a legacy. The president has only this opportunity this year to assent to this bill into law, so that even in the event of the fact that our economic situation has worsened, at least future generation of children in this country will remember him for one thing, that we can rely on him to protect our culture, our tradition, and our nationhood. This is what we want really to send this message, that the president he calls us that we should not be spectators. We must be citizens. And this is where the effect now comes. As somebody who speaks for the National Chief Imam, I'm saying this is the message I'm carrying from the Chief Imam's place. That the president has only this opportunity. Has only this opportunity to leave a legacy for which he can be remembered on a very positive note.
Earlier, we heard from the Catholic Bishops' Conference Secretary General, and he's saying that very soon they'll be going to the Jubilee House to meet the president. What's your own plan in terms of getting this message directly across?
Indeed, we also take similar course. Indeed, we and the Christians are on the same page because we have shared values. Just like the gay thing or the LGBT is objectionable within the context of Christian social teachings, so it is in Islam. It's completely objectionable and reprehensible. It's not something that we play with at all. So on the grounds of our shared values, we can team up with the Christian denominations, and then all the other Muslim sects can really take a common front and really send a message to the president, whom we all respect very well, and we know he also belongs to one of the very important Christian denominations, and he's an Anglican, and he has also indicated that this particular thing will not be under his watch, and we want him to really commit himself to his own words, so that we will remember him in future. He has only this year to leave office, and we want generations of this country yet unborn to remember him for that legacy, that we can depend on our politicians to really protect and preserve the very traditions and cultures and values that have held us together as a nation. It's not something we're prepared to compromise at all.
And you say you won't compromise. The Catholic Bishops' Conference have been very categorical that if this is not assented to, there'll be political consequences. Are you willing to go that far? Well,
we don't even need to mention that, because the majority, more than 90% of people, a survey conducted by CDD has indicated that more than 90% of the citizenry want this bill passed. So it has a consequence. We are not here to advise somebody or vote that way or that way, but the implications is just written clearly on the wall, because it has to do with the conscience of the nation, the feeling of the nation, the belief of the nation, as people who have a strong inclination for religion and people who have strong inclination to uphold culture, tradition, and our values. Those things, I'm sure almost every citizen in this country will really want to think about on the basis of conscience before the person votes.
I mean, very reverend, you welcome this partnership that we've just heard there articulated by the spokesman for the chief imam, that they're willing to partner this to pile the pressure to get this assented to?
Oh, yes, because that is what we always do. In fact, we always share experiences, we share ideas together. And we are even going to meet. I mean, the mouthpiece of the chief imam knows that we always meet maybe twice a year or so. And this May, bishops are going to meet the sheikh and the Muslim community. And this is one of the major issues that will come up, be discussed. So we always come together with Christian Council when there is such issues and so on. So yes, we are ready to team up with them. And in fact, that's what we always do. But just that it's sometimes not so public. So people may not even see reality.
Okay. I'll come back to you to wrap up with you, Nelson, because you're with me in the studio. Let me go back to Apedje-Chan. Mr. Apedje-Chan, so the economic question is one that we haven't highlighted enough, apart from the beginning when we laid out. When the Supreme Court sits to consider this, of course, there's the values, the culture that we consider. Will it at all come into play, the potential economic consequences in considering? This is going to be purely based on what the law says.
It's likely to feature, but I have some concerns about the economic arguments. I mean, the economic position that there should be sanctions, because I go back to the Human Rights Council resolution of June 2016, which was clear that the international community, especially Western states, should not use the weapon of sanctions as a way to coerce developing countries to come up with a law that is against an anti-gay law, which in a sense reflects the culture and particular circumstances of background of a particular country. And the fact that the World Bank is also leading that process is quite ironic, because the World Bank has not been champions for the promotion of human rights. Having said that, I think that what is important is that we try to reconcile the fact that this law as it stands, when it is passed, is certainly going to violate a number of human rights provisions which we have enshrined in our constitution and which we have also are parties to international treaties and so on dealing with human rights. So much as there is some leeway for the states to be able to say that this is how we want to craft our law dealing with LGBTQ issues, human rights is fundamental in defining how we craft these laws. Okay. And having reviewed the law from the beginning to the end, the conclusion is clear that there are a number of areas where rights violation is going to occur, not only for the LGBTQ community, but for you and I. Generally, the scholars and so on are all going to be affected.
On this very subject. I just have a minute to wrap up, Roxy. So
yes,
this is pretty complex here.
Yes.
What's your own strategy going forward? You are
now let me weave in quickly into the financial implications.
If we can do that briefly.
Yes, quickly. Look, we have about 30 other African countries. We have Cameroon, Burundi, Algeria, Egypt, Comoros, Chad, Ethiopia, Eswatini, Eritrea, Kenya, Guinea, Malawi, Libya, Liberia, Namibia, Morocco, Mauritania, Sierra Leone, Senegal, Nigeria, Sudan, South Sudan, Somalia, Togo, the Gambia, Tanzania, Tunisia, Zimbabwe, Zambia, Uganda. with anti-LGBT laws on the African continent. None has been threatened like the way we have. So we will not be the only island in this matter. So nobody in this country should be afraid of the financial implications. The US refused to give us $3 billion when we needed it last year. But they decided to give Ukraine $60 billion. So when they threaten us, they don't give us much. You churn out the statistics. So you don't help us so much, and yet you want to threaten us into oblivion. Nkrumah once said that we prefer independence in danger to servitude in tranquility, and our right to self-determination will be asserted under this matter. So we want to assure everyone that our rights under the Constitution in pursuing this matter will be pursued to the letter. And let nobody be lost of the fact that if it comes to impeaching the president, if he doesn't do this, we will. We will. As a minority, we will start impeachment proceedings against the president. We will not hesitate in doing that at all.
That's Roxy Nelson, the Famekbo, and all of you who join us, enjoy the rest of your evening. This is just the beginning of a long road indeed to seeing whether or not this is assented to, that it becomes law or not.